This is NHIT. We are not affiliated with any camps or hate groups. We have a special guest. We are presenting a Minister of Information and National Spokesman of African Israelites of Jerusalem. Presents Brother Sar Ahmadiel from Dimona, Israel. Y'all can welcome Brother Sar to NHIT. I see everybody coming in now. Welcome, Brother Sar, to NHIT. We definitely appreciate you.
Welcome.
Welcome, shalom.
Welcome, everybody.
Shalom. All right. Fox Development, can you have your camera on, please? We had informed everybody to have their cameras on, please, so we appreciate it if you guys can put those cameras on, Brother Sar, so we can see who we are speaking with before we get started here.
Praises.
But the thing ain't gone, I forgot.
Got your mute your mic. Can you guys, whoever Fox Development is, can you please put your camera on? Brother Mark, can you put your camera on? Brother Awayab, can you put your camera on, please? Everybody, we have a special guest here with respect due. We're asking everybody to put their cameras on. All right. So, Brother Sar, can you just give us a little brief about yourself, my brother, please? And let everyone know. And first and foremost, before we do get started, I want to tell you that we have been keeping you in our prayers. We definitely know the situation of the war over there in Israel. We definitely have been supplicating to Yahweh for you guys and for the whole Israel. And it's definitely a blessing to see that you guys are protected and not having any harm coming in the area that you guys are in. And that's truly a blessing. So we want to definitely get that out the way. And definitely, brother, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Sure. Brother Barawak, and to all of you who are tuned in. First, let me give all praises and honor to the Holy One of Israel, Yahweh, to his anointed in all the dispensations of time that the anointed spirits have been sent unto us. And to all those that are in search of truth, justice, peace, mercy, love, I greet you in the holy tongue, Shalom Aleichem, from Dimona, Israel, Northeast Africa. I'm pleased to hear that you do have us in your thoughts and prayers. That means so much to us. To anyone who has been here, or to anyone who has known of our presence, when you hear about these kind of troublous times here in the land, we should certainly be, the next thought, because we are your family. We are your brothers and sisters on this side of the planet. And we appreciate your thoughts and prayers. We ride on them, and they mean the world to us. So Toda Rabbah on that wise. I am Sar Ahmadiel ben Yehuda. Sar is my title, and it means minister. And it's minister with a portfolio in a governmental sense, not in a religious sense. I'm not a pastor or a preacher. I am the minister of information. My portfolio in the community here in Dimona is that of information, which means I'm charged to compile, collect, analyze, and then disseminate information. Hasbah in Hebrew, which literally comes from the verb hasbir, which means to give an explanation. And that's my portion in the community. I'm probably the or one of the best known faces of the community, simply because that's I interface with media, I interface with anthropologists, I interface with guests when they come up, and like brothers and sisters like yourselves. So we number 3,000, approximately 3,000 here in the land of Israel. We arrived in the land of Israel in 1969, but I must go back to explain that reality. And let's go all the way back to the year 70. I'll try to make this quick.
Take your time, my brother. Take your time.
Okay. All right. During the time of the Roman occupation, the land was being policed by legions, foreign legions of Romans were based in various quarters in this land. And when the Hebrew and Judeans became too much of a thorn in their side, the Romans smashed that culture, that presence, and it sent many of us into exile and fleeing. We became refugees. And I don't need to give you a military primer, in terms of which way would you be to retreat. If the Romans are coming from the north, you logically know that Hebrew Israelites would flee to the south. And when you look at the biblical history, our brothers and sisters in ancient times, we had a close relationship with Egypt and Ethiopia. Egypt and Ethiopia are mentioned 1,500 times in scripture. And so logically, when you begin to look south and you look at the reality that we fled this land carrying babies, we couldn't carry big Torah scrolls, we couldn't carry any artifacts, we carried provisions, changes of clothing, food, helping elders, etc. We began to move in a southerly direction and then to the west. So when you look at the migration patterns of many of the people
I'll
who
see
are
you in a minute. I gotta go take a shower and stuff.
Mute your mic. Jeez. I'm sorry about that. Go ahead, sir.
It's all right, so you look at the migration patterns of many African peoples, they came from this area. And when I mention these particular tribes and ethnic groups in Africa, you will know that they all, if you've done your homework, you'll know that they all have what are called Hebrewisms. They have Hebraic cultural traits and practices that derive from the laws of Moses. They didn't fall out of the sky. So when you look in the West African area, you look at the Ga, the Ashanti, the Fanti, the Ewe. When you look at the Yoruba and the Igbo, who are now in what is called Nigeria, when you look at the Bassa Bantu peoples of what's now Cameroon, when you look at the Lemba people in northern South Africa and southern Zimbabwe, they all have these Hebraic connections, circumcision, sometimes on the 8th day, separation of the women during the menstrual cycle and after childbirth. Linguistic patterns. When you go to Ghana, anyone who goes to Ghana, they will welcome you by saying Akwaba, which is welcome. In Hebrew, it's Barkaba. When you say boy in the tree language in Ghana, it's Benyin, it's Bain in Hebrew. If you say I'm coming, you say Meba in Ghana, and it's Aniba in the Hebrew. So these are linguistic connections. So you have all these different threads of cultural continuity. So we know that many of us ended up in West Africa, and that's where we began to settle after that long 1,000+ years of migration. Well, what happened in West Africa? In West Africa, the established trading routes for people, for the Africans there, the established trading routes with Europeans shifted from ivory and gold and what have you to slaves, to people, human cargo. Who would the established West African traders sell into captivity? They wouldn't have sold their own people. They would have sold relative newcomers. And so we were the relative newcomers. We had the strange customs and traditions and ideas. They were trying to marry their daughters, et cetera, et cetera. So that explains why when you follow the thread of this continuity, and they took much less with them from West Africa into the Western Hemisphere, all they had was an oral tradition. So when you look at the songs that we were singing even Marley, Bob Marley's songs. Where did he get this idea, Zion Train and Exodus? That's from that Rastafarian tradition that thread links back up. It links back up to Africa, across to Africa, to the Ethiopian side, and eventually back up to the Northeast African side. In America, we were forbidden to read, write, preach, or teach, punishable by death, especially after Nat Turner's rebellion. How many of you know that Nat Turner's objective was a town called Jerusalem in Virginia? He was trying to get to Jerusalem, and it scared the white slave owners so bad that they changed the name of that town, you know? So we didn't sing about Mali or Songhai, Timbuktu, places in West Africa. We didn't sing about the River Niger, the River Gambia, the River Volta. We sang about the River Jordan. We sang about Jericho, Jerusalem, Canaan's land. We sang about places and peoples from this land, this part of Africa. This we consider to be Northeast Africa. So fast forward, post-slavery. Greetings, brother. That's right. We testify. Fast forward, post-slavery, post-Emancipation Proclamation. You had itinerant preachers, Prophet William S. Crowdy and others, Bishop C.H. Mason and others. The church, let's be real, the church 150 years ago was a much different institution than the Black church today. Those brothers and sisters were very clear on our identity. They were teaching that we were the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Their idea of community and worship had nothing to do with passing a plate, except, I mean, they passed the plate, of course, but it was really to sincerely take care of community needs. It wasn't to dress the pastor and make sure that his car notes were paid, you know? So when you look at the existence of Hebraic, Black, Jewish, Hebrew Israelite congregations in Detroit, in Chicago, in New York, at the turn of the century, and from that point on, this is a phenomenon that's easily explainable, you know. And so our spiritual leader, Ben Ami, was a member of a congregation in Chicago. He actually was at a water fountain when he was working at a steel mill outside of Chicago, and he met this elder at the water fountain who said something to him about being a Hebrew. And in his mind, it resonated with something his parents always used to tell him, was that he's an Israelite. So he took an interest, he showed up at the classes, and he quickly matriculated and became one of the teachers, learned the language, began to teach. And so in 1966, at the beginning of the peak of the civil rights movement, he's laying on his bed and he's troubled. He's troubled and he's inquiring, what is it that we need to be doing? What does he need to be doing to help his people? And he would always have asked the elders, well, when do we go to Israel? When do we return back? And the elders would always say, it's not time, we're waiting for this, we're waiting for that, the ships of Tarshish. I'm sure you've heard all the excuses. And that didn't rest well with him. So in prayer and meditation, he's visited by the angel Gabriel. And he says that in a 45-second vision, he's instructed that he is to begin the exodus of our people in the following year. He struggled with the idea of sharing that because he didn't want to be laughed at. He didn't want to be ridiculed and ostracized. But after a couple of weeks, he got the nerve up and he started telling his close circle. And to his pleasant surprise, those brothers and sisters said, yeah, we're with you. And not only that, but they then came with little bits and pieces of information that helped to plot our course. For example, one brother said, well, the scriptures said that we would return the same way that we left. Well, we knew we had come via West Africa. So where in West Africa do we go back to on the way back? Another brother says, well, there's Liberia. Liberia was founded by and for African Americans who wanted to return. The next month, 2 brothers were sent from Chicago to Liberia to make the inquiry. They came back with a positive report. It definitely said they welcome us with open arms. It's in their constitution. It requires that they open up their arms and receive us. And so the next year, almost 400 brothers, men, women, and children left the confines of the Chicago area largely and found themselves in Liberia, West Africa. We didn't go in this capital city. We went into the interior. We considered Liberia our wilderness experience. We don't regard, for then in 1967, yes, that was the wilderness. But we come to understand that the wilderness everyone doesn't have to go to Liberia to experience that. You have your own experiences, your own challenges, your own obstacles that you have to encounter on your way back. I wasn't with the original group. I came 10 years later. And when I found out about them, I was only 2 years into the knowledge of my identity as an Israelite. So when I found out that some brothers and sisters had left 10 years prior to that, I was like, man, I'm late, but they had gone through Liberia and gone on up to Israel and had been in Israel for 8 years. But backtrack, 67, those 400 are in Liberia. They clear land. They chop down trees. They set up their Sears and Roebuck tents. I know only a few of us understand about Roebuck, but those tents that we were told were waterproof, they dry rotted within a couple of months, and that was all part of the experience. Brothers and sisters were getting wet. We dug wells. We tell our children, don't play down by the wells. Children being children, little Kanina falls in one day and the rest of the children are afraid to even come back and tell us until it's too late. So we had sacrifices, we had struggles, we had challenges. We didn't know how to eat. The money ran out. You couldn't even, between Ben-Ami, our spiritual leader, and one of his friends, one day they didn't have a penny between them. And with a penny, they could have bought a big bunch of bananas. We suffered from malnutrition, eating white rice and sardines out of a can. We were humbled. There was malaria. There was dysentery. There were green and black mamba snakes that were among the most poisonous varieties. There were the driver ants that would fall out of the trees and you would think it's raining. It rained quite often in Liberia, but it wasn't rain, it was ants that would get in your tent, get up under your clothes and bite. It would come running out of the tent and running out of your clothes. So these are what the pioneers had to endure. Right. And out of the original 400 that left in 67, by 1969, by May of 1969, there were only 138 remaining. What happened to the rest? Most of them decided to go back to America. It wasn't for them. They couldn't handle it. You can understand that anybody who's joined a fraternity or joined the army, there's a washout. There's a falling away. And so we understand, and we just know that, hey, you're good, and hey, we're good. So by 1969, we leave Liberia and we come to Israel. Now, let me back up a minute again. 66, Ben-Ami has his vision. 67, we leave. 66 vision, 67, we leave the Exodus. 68, we're in Liberia, struggling. We hear on our transistor radios, Voice of America, we hear about Dr. King's assassination. King was targeted by J. Edgar Hoover, who wrote a memo that said, prevent the rise of a Black Messiah. Messiah, a Hebraic term. That's in 1968. He's assassinated. April the 3rd, he's in Memphis. He makes his last public address. And his last few words publicly were, "We as a people will get to the promised land." The next morning, stepping out on his balcony from the motel, he's gunned down. Now, we hear about this. We hear about the assassination. We hear about the cities of America erupting in violence. But there was no CNN up to the minute news. There was no recorded video of King's last words. We had no clue. The next month, less than a month later, May of 1968, Ben-Ami and Prince Kiskiyahu leave Liberia and fly here to Israel. And we would simply ask the question, coincidence or providence? So you know how we feel about it, because we certainly are testimony that Yah, the hand of Yah, has been with us every step of our journey. There's no other way or no other explanation as to how we've been able to survive these 53 plus years outside of the lands of captivity. So 1969, we're here in the land of Israel. The remaining group, because Ben-Ami and Prince Kiskiyahu fly here, they go back to the airport, and Prince Kiskiyahu thinks he's getting ready to fly back to Liberia too. But he's told by Ben-Ami, he said, "I didn't get you a return ticket." And so he needed him. He said, "I need you to stay here, learn the language, immerse yourself in the culture, find friends and associates in the important offices that we'll need when the rest of us come." So the next year, in fact, he being committed to that idea, he stayed, did what he needed to do. We call him the Scout affectionately. The next year, when the remaining 137 came, he was able to help and facilitate our absorption. We were initially welcomed. Israel didn't know what to do with us. They didn't know what to do with Black people. They had never really had no dealings with Black people. And frankly, we didn't care too much about white people coming out of the civil rights era in America. You know, we weren't, that was a recipe for disaster, you know, in terms of the chemistry between the two groups. And the next, wow, let me say this. 9 months later, the state of Israel redefined the law of return, and they wrote a new definition for who is a Jew. And it said that you had to prove you had a Jewish grandmother. Well, that effectively, that wrote us out of the definition. And they did it in such a way, they said, and it's 9 months retroactive, this new law, 9 months retroactive. Oh, just so happens to leave us out now. Well, that began in motion. That set in motion 25 plus years of conflict between us and the government, between us particularly and the rabbinate and the religious parties here who control the definition of who is a Jew and therefore who has the right to be here. So they gave us the opportunity early on to convert, which was not something that we contemplated. That was a no, that was no deal. That was a deal breaker for us. We would not convert on principle.
Praise Yahweh.
On principle, that would mean that we would deny to Yah himself, we would deny to ourselves, to our children, that we were who we said we were. So that was never, and again, that set in motion 25 plus years of friction. During that time, we had no access to housing. We did have some houses in the beginning and we didn't let them go. But what it meant was that as we grew, both from the babies that we were having and from new members who were flying in from the States directly, not going through Liberia, but flying in directly from Israel, which would include me in 1977, 78. We were severely overcrowded, which meant that we had to organize ourselves in such a way to function like an army. We didn't have permits. Those of us who were able to get odd jobs, were taken advantage of sometimes. The off and not pay you. Well, what do we do with the brother who didn't have money that month for his wife and children? We let him starve? No. We developed an economic system based on sharing. What about
wow, that's wonderful.
And all things in common? The book of Acts, 5th chapter, 22nd verse, or is it 4th chapter, 22nd verse? All things common. We
4th chapter.
4 and 22. Thank you. And so we made that the fundamental social, economic underpinning of the community. For brothers who got deported, arrested at a work site and deported and end up in New York. Some who never got a chance to get back, spirits were broken, what have you. We didn't let their family suffer. We literally could not afford to get sick. So we had to develop the healthcare system that was preventive in nature. So we began one of the first things we did, we became vegans, strict vegans on arrival in Israel. We just realized you got to drink more water. You got to exercise. Certainly you can't smoke. You got to limit your alcohol intake. We only drink our own homemade fruit wines. No drug use of any kind. We had to teach our own children. We didn't have access to their school system, but we weren't going to let the children as well to teach them. We had qualified brothers and sisters who could teach, but we taught another type of curriculum. Our science was about pro-life. We didn't need to dissect frogs to understand how that worked. We just diagrams by that time. We were teaching peace. How Isaiah said, they shall learn war no more. Well, we were learning the principles of peace and teaching those things amongst brethren and sisters. And so that became the foundation for a lifestyle that has done nothing but grow and expand and elevate as the different revelations have come forth from the Most High. So we took seriously the purpose and mission of what it meant to be an Israelite, what it meant to be a Hebrew, what it meant to be a Judean. What is that purpose and mandate? Well, if you're Hebrew, said in Abraham's seed shall all the nations be blessed. So what blessings are we supposed to be bringing forth to the human family? When you look at the Israelites were to be a light unto the nations. Well, are we talking about some type of electrical light, or are we talking about moral light? We're talking about a higher ascendant type of lifestyle and teachings. That's what we're talking about. And so Israel, the state of Israel, may interpret being a light unto the nations in military terms, in financial terms, in technological terms. We don't ascribe to those ideas. We're talking about basic fundamental morality and what Torah brings to the table, what righteousness brings to the table. Let me say this. We are not religious. We distinguish what we're talking about as a spiritually led way of life versus religion. We feel that religion is actually probably the number one problem on the planet today, and really at the core of what's going on 75 kilometers away from us at this very moment, in Gaza. And so that's an important distinction, and it's more than just semantics. Our relationship with the Holy One of Israel is a 24/7 proposition. It's not just a Sabbath day. It's not just going to a synagogue, a church, a mosque, or what have you. It's not just keeping a few days out of the year and observing the feast days. It's 24/7. It's how you teach your children. It's how you relate to your spouse. It's how you eat. It's how you dress.
Oh, did we lose him just now?
Looks like it.
We look like we might have lost him.
Oh, he's coming back in.
Yeah.
Back.
Okay.
He's still good. Okay, good. Let me open this up again.
Yeah.
All right. So it's the 24/7 proposition for us. We do keep Shabbat. We keep it differently from
Your camera's still off, Brother Sar.
the vast majority of those in this land. I'm sorry.
Your
Camera's
camera's still off. Yes, sir.
Hold on a minute.
Gotcha.
Back on?
Yes.
Okay. So, you know, we observe the Shabbat, but our observance is a bit different. Instead of feasting like most of the Jewish families in the land, we're fasting. You know, we take the rest day in terms of allowing the entire organism, allowing your entire body to rest. So we fast from sundown on Friday to sundown on Saturday. We're fasting. And we did it based on revelation from Ben-Ami and others in the community who were doing the research, doing the study. And we find out many years later that when Herodotus, when a Greek observer of the ancient Hebrews, he said, on the Sabbath day, they fast. Well, we didn't know that when we instituted it, but it just fit with our lifestyle. And so there's many, many things that we do and that we practice that that would take me obviously a long time to lay the framework for. But I assure you that in the last 53 years that we have become masters of this thing called living. That is our objective, to master the art of living. And we're not mad at the Israeli mechanisms, the interior and others that prevented us from getting status and getting us access to their healthcare. Because if we had gotten access to their healthcare system, we probably would not have mastered preventive health. Had we had access to the school system in the beginning, we probably wouldn't have what is a state-of-the-art form of education, which we call dedication, that the curriculum is different and our children excel in those areas. So many things. And we recall that when Joseph was in captivity by his brethren, that it's written, you know, of course, his brethren needed Joseph later, but it's written that his brethren meant that for evil, but the Most High meant it for good. And so we're not angry with the larger Israeli society for some of the ways that they treated us. Yeah, there's some things that we could talk about later about the limits and boundaries of what they should and should not have done. However, we always have had to keep in mind, what was the reason for our exile in the first place? You know, it was our disobedience. The Creator was chastising us. And there's no sense in us getting mad at the rod or the whip. You know, no sense being mad at the slave owners in America. No sense being mad at the slave traders. You know, no sense being mad at those in West Africa whose ancestors sold us into captivity. That's all part of the chastisement. And ultimately, we have to blame ourselves. And so that keeps us humble. That keeps us able to keep in perspective what's going on on the planet right now, which of course it's chaotic, but it's real important that we have some sense of stability forward and understand what is unfolding. With that, let me just say this, and I'll open it up to other questions. And that being that many of the brothers and sisters throughout the captivity are in the awakening to their identity. And that's critical, that's important. And you'd have to know that what is it that motivated us to leave America 53 years ago? It would have had to been rooted in a knowledge of our identity. But having arrived here in 1969, the next day, everything that the next question for us, saying my connection might be unstable. Is it clear?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yes.
Okay. So the next question literally for us became, now what? And we realized that that knowledge of identity got us here. And now we had to focus and align ourselves with that purpose, with that mandate, with that mission, to be that light, to be that blessing. And so everything changed for us. We still understand, and we don't have all the pieces about our identity. That's a shattered and scattered culture. But the brethren who have awakened in the last couple of decades to that identity, why is it that they then can't understand what it is that brought us here? And how did it get that we're here too early? It ain't time yet. And we heard that for the longest time. So when 2019 was rolling around, I personally was very happy. I went back to the States and I moved around to different cities, and I connected up with the Black Jews in New York. I connected up with Rabbi Fournier in Chicago. I connected up with House of David in New York, and even the brothers, the Moorish followers of Brother Bay in New York. I went to White Plains, New York, to the Church of God and Saints in Christ, Prophet Crowdy's organization. Traveled all around Miami, different places, and we organized in 2018, at the end of 2018, up to the first day of 2019, what we call the Ascension Summit. And we called all the families home, representatives home, and we had over 100 delegates. And it was hopeful that from now on, we won't have to hear it ain't time yet. Because what did 2019, all the energy that went behind it, what did 2019 represent? And so sadly, after 2019 rolled around and 2020, and we're in 2023 now, on the verge of 2024, sadly, we realized that Charles Blackwell, that's Prince Kiskiaho, that's Nasi Kiskiaho, that's the one that came here. He's the first one that came. So sadly, I heard all kind of excuses that basically still say it's not time. And I don't know where this 1619 thing came in. What about the 1585 in St. Augustine, Florida? What about 1505 on Hispaniola, the island that is shared between Haiti and the Dominican Republic? What about they weren't Hebrews? They didn't mark the beginning of the 400 years. So we were just happy to see the energy, because we know that Israel is for signs and wonders. So we were just happy to see the energy associated with this idea. But let me stop there and say that I'm open to any questions that any of you might have. I'm just happy that that Brother Barak reached out, and now we've got this linkage here, because this is what's critically important going forward. The family is coming together. We know that the Holy One of Israel is moving us like he moves, like we might move chess pieces, and we're just looking for our cues. We're following our cues, and we don't have all the answers and all the pieces. But together, bringing the family together, we will have everything we need when we need it. It's a critical time on the planet. It's a most critical time on the planet, and I dare say that our time is short to be at a prophesied, prophetic, appointed station. Selah.
We're open for Q&A now. Bill Watt, can't hear you.
Okay, all praises. I'm sorry about that. I was muted. Thanks for the history and the presentation of how you guys started. It's funny that you talked about it, because I stayed up late last night reading the whole transition from you guys going over to Liberia first, and then wow, it's just amazing. And then looking at the Village of Peace where you guys are today shows that it's truly a blessing, man, for y'all to come through that, have your own community, have your own doctors and teachers, and it's just this is what we want for our people.
Hallelujah.
I want to ask one question, and then I'm going to let everybody, whoever has questions, just raise your hand. We'll go in order. But what I want to do, because I want people to hear this on record, a lot of people, excuse me, do not understand the maps of the world. And you mentioned several times Israel is Northeast Africa, right? So a lot of people don't know this. A lot of people think, what's over there today, that the Israeli people that's over there today were actually the people that were in that land during the biblical time. So I want you just to give some information on how do we know it's Northeast Africa? And of course, I've studied it and I know it, but it's a lot of our family members and friends on here that don't know this history and that it sits on the Titanic African plate. Can you just briefly speak about that?
Sure. I'm glad you brought that up. Give me a moment here. I'm just pulling up a couple of my visual aids.
Okay.
Guess I didn't bring that. Hold on. I thought I pulled it out. Yeah, there's no question about it that Africa, here it is. I have it here. There's no question about it that Africa sits on the African tectonic plate. Geologists, Israeli geologists won't dispute this. This is fact. In fact, when you travel the land, only about a 20-minute drive from where we live, these are markers that the National Park Service here have erected on the way down to what's called the Dead Sea, which we call the Sea of Life. We call it the Sea of Life because it's so healing. All the minerals that are in that body of water, it's a very healing and spiritual body of water. And here is the middle. Here's a close-up shot of the middle of that placard. And right here, you will see in Hebrew, it says Haluach HaAfrikani. And this is Africa. This is the land of Israel right here. And this is the Arabian. This is the Arabian plate. And you see how they connect here in the middle.
Right.
So geologically and geographically, this is not in dispute. And when you consider the Bible and its original tongue, original language, the Hebraic language, in a what's called it's classified officially as an Afro-Semitic or Afro-Asiatic language.
Correct.
And the ancient Ethiopian languages are part of the family. Arabic is part of that family. And so Africans spoke African languages, that's another verification. And then if we look in antiquity, we know that, this is a little trickery here. This is the National Geographic magazine that this is from 2008. And this is a Black History edition. Black History. And they're real tricky with this one, because when I saw it, I said the Black Pharaohs. I'm like, wow, they're finally going to tell the truth about who the ancient Egyptians were. And when you get into the story, you realize that you're talking about a culture that lasted for 4,000 plus years. How many of those years do these masters of anthropology and archaeology, and these are the people you trust your children to sit down and watch the nature shows, and travel around the world, what have you. what do they say in here? That the Nubians, the Nubian Africans, dark-skinned Africans, controlled Egypt for 70 years. Just lying, lying.
Wow.
So we know that they cannot, they being the Western world, the Euro-Gentile, the Euro-American world, they cannot give up ancient Egypt. Because if they give up ancient Egypt, they also give up ancient Israel.
They have to, yes.
And so when Moses was instructed to put his hand in his bosom and he pulled it out, it was white as leprous as snow. Well, if it went in white as leprous as snow, that wouldn't have been any great miracle. When Joseph was sitting on the throne and his brothers came into Egypt later, needing help, then it would have been a simple thing. They see their brother sitting on the throne, but they didn't recognize him. Why? He looked like any other Egyptian, except for the clothing that he was wearing at the time. So this lets us know these are the very key important clues that they don't want to deal with.
Right.
And it's all right. Just keep on lying, because lies have expiration dates.
Right. That's right.
Because the God of it, the Most High, the Holy One of Israel, is, according to the scriptures, says teaching priests without the law and without, it says in the English, it says the God of truth, excuse me, the true God, but in the Hebrew, it's the God of truth. Not just the true God, but the God of truth. And so truth is, it really is the Holy Spirit. Truth is the key to us getting our power and connection back with the Most High. So that truth is what the world has to accept. If they don't accept it, that ain't our problem.
Right.
We ain't got to worry about that. We just deliver the message.
Praise Yahweh.
We just drop the receipts. We drop in the receipts. So it's okay, because there's a built-in consequence. There's a built-in consequence based on the choices that we all make. And so, yes, this is North Africa. This is my spiritual father and teacher, Prince Shaliach, who came out of Indianapolis, who was a Church of God Church of God in Christ.
Right.
He was from that background.
Right.
And he later became one of the early teachers in Chicago, teaching of the Hebraic identity of the children of Israel. And here is an Afro-Palestinian who's as dark as Ace of Spades.
Let's talk about that in class, that the Palestinians, Yashia, the teacher of our community, was just talking about how the Palestinians were dark and melanated like that. We were just talking about this in class.
I've got a book. It's not easy to find. It's called The Arabs. It's rather pricey, and we only use one line out of it. And that one line is the original inhabitants of Arabia. We're not the more familiar, called The Arabs.
The Arabs, okay.
Arabs. It's by a fellow named Bertram, B-E-R-T-R-A-M, Bertram Thomas.
The green cover on that book?
And he said the original,
Is it a green cover on that book?
It's a hardback. It's an old hard. Yeah, it was green and orange, I think. I actually had two. The first one walked.
Oh, wow.
Walked, and I had to get a new one. It cost me $70.
Can you give us that name again?
The Arabs. The Arabs by Bertram Thomas.
And what was his quote?
Listen to the quote. The quote, and I know it by heart.
What page is it on?
We're not the more familiar Arabs of our own time, but a very much darker people. The original inhabitants of Arabia were not the more familiar Arabs of our own time, but a very much darker people. Now, if you write a book on anything, where would you expect it to talk about the original of whatever you're writing about? It would be, if not on page 1, it would certainly be in chapter 1, right? Bertram Thomas, Bertram Thomas, Bertram Thomas. That quote is found on page 397. Not even part of the book. It's in the appendix to the book. It's in the appendix. What does that tell us? It tells us that obviously the author is trying to hide something.
Right.
And he's hiding the true identity of the people of this region, of this land. So let me give you some other, now that was the earlier picture I showed you was my teacher. Well, this is me. This is the next generation. This is me on this side right there. That's me. And in the middle, that is Sheikh Aid. Sheikh Aid, who is an Afro-Bedouin. He lives a half hour from where we live. And that's his wife.
Yeah, I seen the video. I believe I see he's in one of the videos where he's speaking with brother, what's the name, right? Where he's laying on the bed,
right.
the dark-skinned brother.
Exactly.
Yes, he gave a powerful information about the Black Palestinians over. Wow.
Right.
Yeah, I remember that video. Yes.
Right. So when you start digging into this land, this history, there's no question that the ancient peoples look like you. And you got to know what happened. And so we have a whole exhibition that we set up for guests when they come. In fact, we have a copy of it in Atlanta at the moment. It's getting ready to shift down to Tallahassee. But the exhibition focuses on the Black presence here. Right. We deal with the Crusades. We deal with the Berlin Conference. We deal with the early Zionist movement. We deal with this is Theodore Herzl. Theodore Herzl is considered to be the father of Zionism. Okay, that's Herzl right there. Okay, that's Herzl. This is him on the boat that brought him to Israel for the very first time in 1898. For the first time, he's coming to Israel. Well, this is the photograph that the Israelis have in the Museum of Jewish History in Tel Aviv, at the University of Tel Aviv. But we found this photograph. It's the same photograph, but do you notice something different? You notice who's over here in the corner? Can you see him in that corner?
I see that.
Wow. Wow.
Who is that brother?
Who is that really brother?
No. It's half.
Is that the Palestinian brother?
I don't think this. No, that might be his grandfather.
Right, but yeah, he's definitely dark.
You know, and so that photograph prompted me to get a copy of Herzl's diary to say, hey, did he talk about him? Didn't find anything about it, but you got to know that when Europeans went into African lands, they always had an indigenous person to be their guide.
Yes.
They always. That's just the truth.
Yes.
And so we know that. I mean, look at how he's dressed. He's an indigenous inhabitant of the region. So it's crucial to know these things And it helps when we show these. Are they backwards? Is the English backwards on this? Is it backwards?
No.
Oh, okay. So this is a quote from Ben-Ami, spiritual leader Ben-Ami. He says, blacks have been taught to believe that whatever Europeans give them is acceptable. Black scholars no longer study the events of the Old Testament, nor do they understand that Hebrew history is African history.
Praise Yahweh.
And so when many of our brothers and sisters go through that Afrocentric awakening, what's the next thing they do? They want to talk out. They want to say that's a white man's book.
Yeah.
But again, what kind of white man's book mentions Egypt and Ethiopia 1,500 times? Just be honest and say, you don't understand the Bible. We'll accept that. We understand that.
The sister asked CC the picture one more time. She wanted
this
to see
one,
yes.
this one, or the one
that one right there, Dabara? That one or the other one?
The other one.
The other one.
The other one with the Palestinian brother at the right side. You might have to put it up a little closer. See him to the left, Dabara, with the head thing on? He dressed different from everybody else. To the left of the screen. You don't see it?
I don't see it.
He's right here. He's right here. Right there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Got it?
Yes.
All right. See him?
All right. Yes, you got him. All right, so Brother Sar, I know everybody's got questions, so Dabara had a question first. Yeah. So we're gonna let her go, and then I think Kashiai got some questions, and everybody who has got questions, raise your hand, y'all.
Hold on 1 second. I want to grab some water.
Okay, go ahead. Dabara,
Dabara, I put it in the chat.
Huh?
They desert dwellers too. That's what they dark-skinned desert dwellers. That's why they call them Bedouins.
But that's how you spell it and everything, Dabara.
Okay, I'm writing it down.
All praises. Yeah, y'all get your questions ready. I'm gonna go in order of how y'all raise your hands. I'll write down who's next, and like that.
Man, this is fat right here, man.
Yeah, this is definitely a form of information. You know what really is. People really need to understand that's Africa. Go ahead, Sister Dabara.
All right, I'm back.
Oh, all right. Shalom. My question was, I was asking what was a Afro Bedouin?
Yeah.
Bedouin?
Yeah, Bedouin. Good question. He's an Arab. He's an Arab, but the Bedouin speaks to the culture. Bedouins, in fact, our father Abraham was a Bedouin. In other words, they move from place to place with their flocks, tending their herds of cattle, sheep, goats, camels, whatever, and they move from place to place. They lived in tents, they lived on the land. That's Bedouin. And so it's talking about a culture. It's a culture. And in this part of Israel, in the southern part of Israel, and traditionally, most of the Arabs, you go back 2-3 generations, most of them were Bedouins. And so in this area, we maintain close connections with families all throughout this region who are Afro-Bedouins. They're not a large number of people, but they are, once you meet them, you'll know that there's annual presence here. 20% of the city of Jericho are people of African origin. Those are Afro-Palestinians. So the Bedouin is simply talking about their culture. They would all be Arabs, technically Arabs. But let me. This gets complicated. But it's not really complicated when if you can roll with me. When different armies came into this land, it wasn't like, if any of you brothers and sisters have done army service, when you're out of the country, when you're in foreign bases, you get MREs, meals ready to eat, right? Your food is shipped in. But in antiquity, when those foreign powers were coming into this land, they didn't have that supply line. They had to eat off of the land. And so in this land, you had farmers, you had peasants, people who farmed. That was what they did. And they didn't care about the politics. If it was Christians, they were like, okay, I'll be Christian. If it's Muslims, okay, Allahu Akbar. And so, but those people maintained their relationship with the land. They grew their crops, and they knew that I got to give X percentage to keep to the Romans to support them. I got to give X percent to the Moorish legions. And so generations go by, and there was always still a presence here. So even though, it's like CSI, crime scene investigators. The crime here in this part of the world is that this part of Africa was transformed from black to white. And a good CSI agent can come in, he'll go over in the corner, he'll find a little hair, put it in the bag, take it back. And that hair is one of these kind of hairs, and so that's an African hair. They can take DNA, they get the special lamps and they find the DNA. Well, what does the DNA say about this land? You familiar with the Lemba? The Lemba people, again, of northern South Africa and southern Zimbabwe?
Yes.
I know to the prophet, the ancestors who did lots of work in that area. He's the one that had the idea to get a geneticist from Oxford to go down with him and do the DNA swabs. It was Professor Mativa, the leader of the Lemba at the time. He said, yeah, we'll do the DNA testing. Well, what did the DNA test show? It not only showed that they are indeed connected to this land, but that their DNA connection is stronger than the Ashkenazic Kohen line. So there's no question that what we're talking about, it's real. It's real, and it's just a matter of time before people start adding up 2 + 2 and getting 4 instead of the current 5 that they've got.
All praises for that.
They're gonna need some help.
Yashia, you got the next question. Kalab, you next, and then Aunt Felicia.
All right. So, well, I'm gonna keep this to manuscript information that we got a few questions about. Not particularly concerned with anything of the Old Testament, because we got that. We know that that's lock, stock, and barrel. That's our basis right there for our culture and history. The question is, we had viewed a video made by a gentleman who you may be familiar with. His name is Michael Rood. He's over in the land. He's a Gentile, Messianic Jew person, and he mentioned during a teaching format with a Cariot Jew by the name of Nehemiah Gordon that they were, in fact, and when I say they, I mean the Israeli government was in possession of thousands of Hebrew New Testament manuscripts. And I was just wondering if you had any insight or knowledge of any of those manuscripts, if they in fact exist or not.
That's interesting. The name Nehemiah Gordon is familiar. I can't place it at the moment. The first thing
he wrote a book.
I'm not.
He wrote a book called excuse me, Elder, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He wrote a book called the Hebrew Yeshua versus the Greek Jesus.
That's interesting. That almost that almost sounds like, oh, wow, I don't even have it over here. Where is my copy? Our spiritual leader wrote a book called Jesus, the Christian Christ, or Yeshua, the Hebrew Messiah.
I have that book.
Okay, okay. But no, I would want, I got to dig into the subject matter myself. But I was always under the impression that that the book of Revelation was actually written, its original language was in Hebrew, but I haven't found that lately. Somewhere I saw it and I've been looking for it and haven't been able to find it again. But it would just make sense. Yes, the earlier manuscripts, if they were speaking Aramaic, well, Hebrew was the related language of the text that was being used. So it would just make sense. Our position about the so-called New Testament is this, that we would prefer to call it the Greek Testament, and the Old Testament, we would call it the Hebrew Testament, because the whole idea of calling something old and new, when a sister get a new dress, what happens to the old one? If she don't give it away, it's in the back of the closet, ain't in the front. When a brother get a new car, he leave the old one at the lot. And so you know you can't pick up a text 3/4 of the way into it and think that you're going to understand it if you rip the first 3/4 off and throw it away. You know, it's impossible. So and that's easy to verify that there is a continuity there, because Yeshua himself in the what are called the Gospels, he says, "Is it not written? Written where? Was it not said? Said by who? Where?" If he said, if you want to know about me, search the scriptures. What scriptures? There were no Gospels. There were no letters of Paul when he made,
especially when he was talking.
So he had to be referring to the Old Testament. So Yeshua was very much rooted in the Hebraic idea, you know. And so this is important, because many of our people, when I say our people, I'm talking about these denominations that gave our people Bibles that literally start with Matthew.
Right.
And that's their text.
Right.
And we're not even talking about the pastors who might pull one line and give you the sermon on one scripture. How many times we heard my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge? But go back to the first verse in that. Go back to Hosea, the first verse in chapter 4, and it makes it clear what knowledge. It ain't talking about the knowledge of Harvard and Yale and MIT. It's talking about the knowledge of Yah, that the priests were supposed to be teaching us, you know? And so that missing, the context is gone. And you would think, oh, I need to go get me a good education from the university. So we have to put all this in context. Got to put it in linguistic context, historical context, cultural context. You can't separate Yeshua from what was going on in his day, you know. So when you get here, brother, and we look forward, you know, when the dust clears and settles in here, when you get to go up to the Galilee, when you get to go to Jerusalem, we're able to make the land come alive, and you can see the bigger picture and the context, and it will begin to make sense, because what we've been given is a fairy tale. You know, there's too many fairy tale concepts that we have. What did I do with my oh, here we go. We got a fairy tale version. No, that ain't it either. Oh, here we go. I wanted to share something here.
He said a fairy tale version. I like that.
Well, you know, this land is like Disney World, man. This is like a religious day. Most people will come and they will take you different places. Now, Jesus was here, Jesus was there, he did that here. And the truth of it is, we don't know if he was there or what. I I mean,
Mhm.
there's two different places that they call Golgotha. There's two different places where they say he was crucified and
I
executed.
seen that. I seen that video. I seen that video. They
Yeah.
tried to say it was in that particular building, right? Yeah.
And it's very clear he was buried in a cave.
Mhm.
According to the scriptures, he was buried in a cave. In that church, they have a stone there. And they say this is the stone where his body was anointed with the oils and what have you. And it's a known fact that that stone was not brought into that church until 1810. So was it in storage somewhere 1,800 years? Or is it a religious gimmick? And
Y'all hear this?
nobody's telling people this. So they give you what you want to hear. If you're Christian, let me show you where Jesus walked. And you get all caught up in the emotion, and you come and you go back, and you've never really understood anything. Yeshua said that you worship ye know not what. He said, by your traditions, you have made the word of God of none effect. Yah's truth, God's message is power. It was, thy law is a lamp unto our feet, you know? And so the lies that we've been taught, you know, so with all that imagery, with all the imagery that we've been given, they ask who was Jesus? So every year, and you know, all of us grew up with these pictures on our you know, grandmom's house, on the walls of her house, her room, in church, on television every Easter and Christmas. So that we look up and they're asking, does heaven exist? You know, and this heaven don't exist. Somebody up there in the sky, that heaven doesn't exist. They are rethinking the resurrection. Wait a minute. You gave us the resurrection. You interpreted it for us. You told us that we were going to die and go in the ground and come back and rise in Christ. And you're rethinking it? We sure better be rethinking what it means. This is in Ghana. This is at the University of Ghana, Legon campus. I took the photograph myself. Repent. This is what I say. Jesus, your only hope in life. Jesus, your only hope in life. This is at a university in Ghana. On the campus. This is a statue that's been erected in Ghana by a church showing the angel slaying the dragon or the demon, the devil. Wow. And who is the devil? It's a black man. Wow. The white angel has his foot on the head of a black man. Wow. What do young black children think when they see this? Wow. And does that have a connection with this? There's a direct connection with this. Go anywhere in Africa. This is the Supreme Court of Sierra Leone. How is it that after 64 years of independence, that they're still wearing the powdered wigs and colonial robes of their former colonial masters?
Yeah, European custom tradition, right?
It's because in our minds, being the spiritual people we want to be like God. We want to be liked by God. We want to be in the image of God, accepted by God. And if God has become a white man in our deepest psychological consciousness, then that's the only way to explain it. Why we still think that it's better living with the white folks. Anything white folks give us is better. You know, we pay extra to go get something from white folks. When Newsweek in 1988 put a black Adam and Eve on the cover.
Right.
1988.
Might get that picture. I don't got that
Search
one. I never saw that one.
Yeah.
This was their number 3 all-time cover story.
Yeah.
1988, The Search for Adam and Eve. Scientists explore a controversial theory about man's origins.
Yeah.
Is it controversial? It's controversial because the scriptures teach us to honor your father and mother. And if this is the father and mother of all humanity in a white supremacist world, that ain't easy for them. That's going to be controversial for them to do.
Right.
And even with this, they're still perpetuating the deception. Do snakes talk? Was it an apple?
Right.
So
Right.
the problem has been not one of you know, when you look at the Bible, yeah, they didn't write it, they translated it.
Translated.
But even that isn't the big problem. Some places they mistranslated on purpose, maliciously. They mistranslated some things. But most of the times they translated it pretty faithfully. The problem has been interpretation, out and out lying with their interpretation. One quick example. Ham was cursed, right?
Say that again.
You must be teaching. I didn't hear nobody say nothing.
Yeah.
Y'all been self-taught. Ham was never cursed.
No.
It don't say that nowhere in scripture.
That's what they say.
And nowhere in scripture was anyone cursed a color. Well, let me take that back. Nowhere in scripture was anyone cursed black. Nowhere.
No.
But if you pick up a Schofield Bible and go to the index and look up Ham, it will say God, and it will give you the scripture. It don't exist. That is a matter of interpretation, and that's malicious.
Yes.
That's malicious.
Yes.
So anyway, I'm gonna pause there. Any other questions?
Kalab, you're next.
Yes. Thank you for coming on, brother. The question I had was more on for the brothers and sisters who were interested in making a change, as you brothers and sisters did. What, in your opinion, would be the best way to go about that? Where should we start? Do you have people over there with your organization that we can contact as far as starting the transition? And just on a personal level, what would you recommend us to do within our household to start the transition for those who say, man, look, I'm tired of living over here. I'm fed up. I wanted something different. I want to change. And if we really necessary, if we feel like, I'm ready to make that commitment to make the change or the transition over there, whether we have to start off in Africa, work our way to Israel, or come straight to Israel, or whatever what would you recommend the best way to go about that, how to go about it, and also the timeline on citizenship, or the pathway to citizenship over there. What is that like too as well?
Okay, excellent questions, brother. What's your name?
Kalal.
Kalal. Where are you?
I'm in Washington, D.C.
Oh.
That's where he from.
That's where he from.
I was born and raised there.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I'm born raised Southeast Washington DC.
Okay. I did my lifeguard training at Anacostia Pool. My
Yeah.
father was a broker, a real estate broker in town. He was at the Penn Branch Shopping Center.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's still there. It's still
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good.
I can give you the number to reach out for a brother there in DC. We maintain skeleton crews there. They're all very close to leaving. We've given them 2 years notice 3 years ago
Right.
to close up and get out. The option to come here is not open at the moment. You would have to qualify as a Jew. If you read the book of Obadiah, you'll see that force active that is blocking that way. But nevertheless, this is our ancestral home, and this is headquarters for all of us. If we have to go to Liberia or Ghana or Kenya or Tanzania or South Africa, I'm in and out of South Africa often. I would have been in Zambia right now, but I stopped because of the troubles here. I postponed my trip. And in those countries, there are Hebrew congregations, brothers and sisters who have been going through this awakening there. And they are identifying by means of the culture. So they practice everything that we say, hey, eat like this. This is how we do this. This is how we do that. If you're not familiar with this book, I would strongly urge you to get a copy. God, the Black Man, and Truth.
I got
God,
it.
Man, and Truth. This is Ben-Ami's first read. This is his first of 9 full books. He has many transcripts that we have that I can make available to you. I'll start sharing them with Brother Barawak so that he can share them with you. But I would suggest that you start with that book. And we've got lots of documentaries and articles and writings in different formats that I can also share. I've already shared a few with Brother Barawak.
Yes.
So when you contact the brother in DC, you need to make arrangements. Hey, meet him for dinner when I'm sure he'll invite you over for dinner or something one day, or a meeting, or just to sit and talk. He works at the Homeland Security.
Okay.
Yeah. And so he might meet you on a lunch break or something. I don't know, what you do or where you are, but and every now and then I get over there. I'm not trying to get that side. But if I do, hey, I'll try to let you know, and we can hook up.
Yeah, you being in Washington,
who else do we have?
Definitely meet up with you.
All right, homie.
Right. Felicia? Felicia?
Shalom. What's the difference between Israeli and Hebrew Israelites?
Israeli is the modern nation state, the Jewish state. Citizens of the Jewish state, they would be called Israeli. Israeli, you will not find in scripture. You would find Israelite. And when you say that you are a Hebrew Israelite, you're talking about your nationality. So we are Israelites. That's our nationality. Hebrew is more the ancestral lineage going back to Abraham.
Mm-hmm.
And to say, when you hear the Jewish state, you don't find Jewish in scripture. You don't find Jew except in the case of Mordecai. And that's not even correct. It's Yehudi. And what it really is saying is Judean, a Judean, or a Yehudi, from Yehuda, one of the 12 sons and then 12 tribes of Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. So we are not Jewish. To say that someone is Jewish, that means they follow the tenets of Judaism. We're not religious. We're not practicing Judaism. We are Judeans. We're Judeans in two different ways. One, because we do identify as being of the tribe of Judah. We consider that our tribal connection, Judah. Second, we are Judeans because where we live here in Dimona is in southern Judea. This is the land of Judea. So we are Judeans. We're Hebrew Israelites, again, the larger nationality. And as Ben-Ami pointed out years ago, he said that if you were to call a Levi a Judean, you'd have problems. If you were to be calling a Simeonite
Judean.
Judean, you would have problems. They would, no, I'm not from that, you know. And it's an important distinction that you have to go back prior to this religious confusion. And if we're being honest, if it's all about genes and DNA and genetics and biology, then what is it made Abraham the first Hebrew? Because if it was about the bloodline, you would be talking about Chaldean ancestry. And so what I'm saying here is that that is not important. That's not important because it's a behavior, it's a culture that defines who we are as sons and daughters of Yah, of the Most High, as Israelites, as Hebrews. If you might, in your own time, look at Isaiah 56 chapter, where Isaiah says that a stranger can get a name and a place greater than of sons and daughters. And he goes on and he says, for my house shall be a house of prayer for all nations. And a stranger, again, a stranger who has nothing to do with this culture, who has nothing to do with this land, who has nothing to do with this Hebraic identity, a stranger can get a name and a place greater than of sons and daughters. It's not about the bloodline. So I'm sure you brothers and sisters are familiar with Revelation 2 and 9, Revelation 3 and 9. It says, I know the works of those who say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. Well, going back to that purpose that I was saying about earlier, being aligned with our purpose and mission as Judeans, as Israelites, as Hebrews, if we're not aligned with that purpose, then we could fall in that category too, of those who say we are Judeans, but if we ain't walking the walk, we just talking the talk, then we're guilty of that same thing. And therefore we can lose this birthright. So that keeps us humble. That a stranger can get in here and get a name and a place greater than sons and daughters, no problem. Our doors are open. It's hard for them to humble themselves and to abide by these laws, to abide by this truth, and to receive it at the hands of dark-skinned people. But nevertheless, that's what's going to have to happen. We are for signs and wonders. We're the former of all things. We're rising again. We're no longer in Deuteronomy 28 when it says we shall be the tail. You know, we're back at the head now. It don't quite look like it, but all beginnings are small. All beginnings are small. When does it begin? You know, you can't have millions before you have hundreds of thousands. Can't have hundreds of thousands for tens of thousands, thousands, hundreds, tens. What's the most important number? The one. You got to have the one. If you ain't got one, you just got a bunch of zeros. And so we're the one. We're the one. In fact, we're 3,000 now. So, but we had to have the one. We had to have the one, brothers and sisters. In all humility, we had to have the one. You know, so we're thankful to the vision he received. We're thankful that he answered the call. We're thankful that he gathered those unto himself and paved the way and was a father for us. He was a teacher, guide, friend. He was our Messiah. And I'm using that in the ancient Hebraic context.
Right.
That all of the kings, all of the prophets, all of the judges of antiquity in Israel's history were all considered to be anointed or Mashiach, singular, singular, Mashiach, singular. But if you talk about them in the plural, if I say anointed, anointed person, anointed people, the anointed, you don't know the difference. But in Hebrew, it's very specific. It's Mashiach for the singular and Mishikim for the plural. Israel is the Creator's firstborn. Hosea 11, chapter 11, verse 1. Israel is my firstborn. How did they get this idea that Jesus was not only firstborn, but he's the only begotten son? All of the kings, David was anointed. David was Messiah, you know?
Definitely, facts.
So we got to look at this scripture, this record in its historical context. Other than that, we'll be in left field somewhere.
Yeah.
And we will be waiting for our deliverance to come on a cloud, on a literal cloud, and not in the sense of it being a higher elevated consciousness that comes by way of a doctrine and a message that causes you to change the way that you think. And when you change the way that you think, you will change your surroundings and your reality. So,
anybody else have any questions?
I got one more if don't nobody else have one. I like wait and see first. Just one more.
Anybody else? Because I got one too.
Oh, okay.
Anybody else? No, Yashia, you can go first. Anybody else though? We want to put you in line just in case. Okay, go ahead, Yashia.
So this is the big question that I think the people would benefit from hearing from someone else, especially particularly one of our esteemed elders, such as yourself, sir, who we have a great deal of admiration and respect and love for. The question that I preface to you is so you can expound on this, and this should be brief. We're Hebrew Israelites by DNA, our genetics, our blood pattern. Can you be a Hebrew Israelite by birth and practice some of these foreign teachings, such as Christianity, Islam? It's so many of them. We spread out in everybody else's teachings and walk. Would that change the fact of our biological roots? So I guess what I'm asking is, can you explain to the listeners how, even if they're in Christianity, going to church on Sundays and they're going to the mosque on Fridays at 12:30, that will not change the fact that biologically that they're Hebrew Israelites, if they come from the diaspora and where we descend from?
Right. No, good question, good point. First, let me say that I'm blessed to have been a good student who had great teachers. You know, I wish sometimes I'd been paying a little more attention when I was in those classes and at their feet. But I'm standing on the shoulders of many. So let me say that myself, in coming into the idea that I was a Hebrew Israelite, I didn't convert to that. That's my identity. That is my Hebraic, that's my cultural, ethnic identity. I only discovered that that was what I was. So it wasn't like I had to make a transformation. So yes, you can be a Hebrew Israelite and be a Christian. You could be a Hebrew Israelite and be a Muslim. You know, however, when you understand the totality of what that means as a Hebrew Israelite, you know that Christianity is not the vehicle to bring the salvation that you're looking for. In fact, you as a Hebrew Israelite are that vehicle. You're the messenger. You're the one who's supposed to be bringing that light to the people. You know, it's been given to you. You know, it's not spooky or mythical. You know, we are the embodiment of this word, of this truth. And the reason that the world is in the state that it's in is because we walked away from that role that the Creator gave us. And because we went into captivity, the world into darkness. Here we are on our way back, and we have to straighten the mess that the world is in. It's our fault. We have to bring the light. We're the bearers of the light. Arise, Israel. You know, arise and shine, for thy light has come. Truth has come again. So you can say you're a Christian, you can say you're a Muslim, you can say all manner of things, Buddhist, what have you. But what does that really mean at the end of the day? You can actually say you're a Hebrew Israelite, but what does that mean? If your lifestyle doesn't testify of the transformation from of decadence, then you are, as Yeshua said, you are what did it say about being fit for the dunghill? If salt don't savor, you know, cast it out. So we become unproductive. We become servants, slothful servants. You know, we become those that get left behind. We've been called for a mission, and if we're not answering that call right now, then brothers and sisters, I don't know who we're waiting for.
Right.
Nobody else planned for our deliverance. And if you are expecting that you can be on your knees all you want praying, I'm not in any way diminishing the role and the portion of prayer in our lives. But if when we finish praying that we don't get up and begin to move with all faith that what we just prayed for is going to manifest itself, then we don't have anything coming. Faith without works is what? It's dead.
Dead.
So we have to get out of the mythological constructs of religion and understand that this has everything to do with a nationality, a role, a portion that we must fulfill, and we have to step up to the plate. We have to be saviors that the world needs to see. If you read in the book of Obadiah, the 17th verse, I believe it opens up by saying, and saviors shall come up on Mount Zion. Saviors, plural, with an S at the end. But you and I, growing up in this Greco-Roman world, even if we considered ourselves to be atheists, we were still deeply affected and impacted by this Jesus culture. Even if we try to deny that it had an impact on us, it influenced us deeply. So we have an expectation of salvation that is in the afterlife. And what we have come to understand by having access to the Hebrew, and in Hebrew, unlock the meaning of certain scriptures that you would not get otherwise. So from our understanding of the text, opposed to religion, religion teaches you that you are going to die and then you will go to heaven or to hell. That's the religious expectation that we've been taught and that we have. And it's deep in there. It's very, very deep in our consciousness. But truth is that according to the Hebraic idea of what defined life and death, we already died. We already died and went, guess where? We definitely didn't go to heaven, not looking at our condition on the planet. We died and went to hell. What do I mean? Adam and Eve were told, in the day that you eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, ye shall surely what?
Die.
There you go. Did Adam and Eve fall over physically dead that day?
No.
No.
So then you got two options. You got two options. Either God lied, or you're going to have to look at what that definition of death was and see it in another mindset. We know God didn't lie. So that narrows it down to the latter.
Amen. Spiritually.
Death was that's it. It was a spiritual death.
Yes.
It was being cut off from the source of our strength. Okay. And it's like these phones. It's like these phones. It's unplugged. It's at 99% right now. I just unplugged it. It's at 99%, but it's dying. It's dying unless I get it back to the source of its strength. And so that's the way we have to look at this. We already died and went to hell. But Yeshua understood the same thing. 4,000 years later, after Adam and Eve, 4,000 years later, what did Yeshua say? He said, let the dead bury the dead. So there were people who were digging the graves. There were people who were undertakers. There were people who were catering. There were people who were driving the hearse, But in Yeshua's eyes and in his understanding, he understood that the people had already died. They were dead. So that's our message in a nutshell, that we've got to relook at these things, these ideas, these important concepts, because they've been captured. They've been captured by an adversary. And what better way to deceive us? I mean, how is it written? It says, marvel not, for Satan himself has been transformed into an angel of light, and his ministers as ministers of righteousness. Mm-hmm. So that's the language they use. They talk God. They speak God. They use scripture. The devil knows scripture now. But we have to be able to discern. Malachi 3:18, in the last days, we shall discern between those that serve Yah and those that serveth him not. Mm-hmm. They talk a good game, but you gotta study to show yourself approved. You gotta have a very keen sense of discernment, because the devil's subtle. It's very subtle. You gotta listen very carefully sometimes to know fine differences, fine delicate differences. So we're in the latter days. We're in the last days. But are we talking about the end of the planet, or are we talking about the end of a dominion over the affairs of the planet. The Bible's not talking about the end of the earth. In fact, it's actually written that the earth shall abide forever. So we see them, we're in the thick of it. We're in the eye of the hurricane right now. And any of you who've ever had to ride out a hurricane know that the safest place would be in the center. You know, so we're in a geopolitical hurricane right now. We're seeing Yoel, the 3rd chapter. We're seeing Ezekiel 38. We're seeing Daniel 11. We're seeing all these prophecies converting here. We're seeing not one, but 2 aircraft carrier fleets right off the shores of the Mediterranean. And they got another one not too far in the Persian Gulf, 1,000 miles away.
Wow.
You know, we're looking at what the prophets talked about. You know, so it's late, and our awakening is actually the catalyst for those events, because our awakening is the sign that their days are short. Yeshua in the 24th chapter of Matthew says, he said, except those days be shortened, there should no flesh be left alive, no flesh saved. If we don't stand up and bring an end to this dominion, this fool he will destroy the whole planet. He would do it. In just 500 years, he didn't brought it to this point. So you and I represent the new world order, the new age. We are the ones who are the chosen, but we're not chosen to elevate ourselves above other people. We're chosen to be the ones to bring the light, to bring the salvation, to bring the teachings, to bring the example, to bring the models, and teach others so that they have a chance at salvation. If they don't, they're gonna miss it. So there's some, going back to my brother in DC, what's his name again?
Glob.
So in very practical ways, we got to change fundamental things we do. We can't eat the way we're used to eating. You know, fast food and soul food is killing us. It's killing us. We're vegans. We're strict vegans. We're not designed to consume flesh. I don't know what to tell you in 2023 if somebody want to argue with me and they want to keep chicken and meat and pork and beef or whatever. I'm not getting ready to argue with that, because the science is very clear. And scripturally, we can go back to, let's go back to the very first instruction in the 1st chapter, 29th verse. First time the Creator gives us dietary instructions. It's plant-based. Yes, right. Moses did say, you can eat this animal, don't eat this animal, don't touch that animal, you know, don't eat this fish, don't eat that fish, eat this bird, don't eat that bird. What do we eat? We eat all the stuff that we eat and brag about it. I eat anything. And so is it any wonder we're so sick? The only places we lead in America in first place is in disease, incidence of disease. It's not by accident. You know, we're out of cycle. So we went back to the beginning, because Moses was giving his people guidelines for having just come out of the captivity in ancient Egypt, hundreds of years in captivity there. He knew he couldn't change everything instantly in one swoop, and they didn't even follow those instructions. 7 days later, they was clowning. So we know that we know it was us.
All praises.
We know that was us.
All right, so I got
there's some fundamental there's some fundamental practical things that we can share to put you on a path, on a trajectory that will bring you, you know, in an ascending role. And as you elevate that consciousness, or elevate that dietary commitment, elevate that culture, elevate that historical knowledge, all of that works hand in hand, and it will bring you to a closer and closer relationship with the Most High.
Right.
gracious. I got two quick questions before we let you go. One was I read where they've been they found some skulls and skeletons and stuff over there in Israel, but they have not revealed the what they look like and who they are, right? So my question is, do you think that like they're finding a lot of stuff that proves that they were Israelites and they were look like us, but they don't want to reveal it to society? Do you believe that they're holding back DNA information about some of the findings that they're finding?
I definitely have my suspicions about some of the recent discoveries and what they initially say, because they actually straight up say that the remains that they found in Lachish, which is about a 45-minute drive from us, that they actually originate in Anatolia in the Caucasus somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't validate what we would say is the narrative. So I'm suspicious of how they're coming up with that.
Right.
We don't put nothing past them.
Lachish had a lot of melanated people. I read some information on Lachish.
Yeah. And we've seen the carvings, the relief carvings of the brothers with the Nubian knots. You know, we see the lips, you know, on the different carvings and what have you. We don't even debate anybody on what the ancient Israelites look like in this land, right, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago. I don't debate. I don't even get into that with Israelis, and they don't argue with me about that. They inherently know that 2,000 years ago, the people living here were much darker, you know. Right. But like in the case of that book about the Arabs, you know, it's like a footnote. You know, it's way in the back. Oh, by the way, you know.
Yeah.
But I think that, you know, I just suspect anything they're doing to have a deceptive intention, and I would question their motives and their science, their methods, you know.
Right.
So I'm waiting. I'm watching carefully, but we have some other information that says validates what we talk about.
Right. All right.
Can that be shared with us, Ak? The other information?
I will send you the chapter. I might have already shared it with Barawak.
Okay.
It's a chapter in a book that I wrote. I didn't write the book, but I wrote the chapter. I'm trying to think of it. Here it is.
Those Lachish findings, the cranial findings were, and the jawbones and stuff was prognathous, so they know that they come from descend from the Negroid people. So I don't know what the new narrative is about Anatolia. That just don't even make sense.
No, and that's the thing about lying. You know, when you tell one lie, you inevitably have to come back and tell another.
What's the name of that African what?
The name of this is Africana Jewish Journeys, Studies in African Judaism. Africana Jewish.
And who's it by?
It's the editor is Marla Brettschneider, Edith Bruder, and these are members of what is called the International Society for the Study of African Judaism.
Okay.
I wrote chapter 2.
Oh, wow. Great.
Chapter 2, I think I sent it to Barawak. Chapter 2 questions the whole narrative of who is a Jew.
Right.
And I basically am telling them, you know, you all want to study us, and your studies come from a particular paradigm. And the paradigm is that the original people that you're studying were white.
Mm.
And so when you start looking at African Jews, African Hebrew Israelites, Black Jews, the question is always going to be, how did you convert from, when did you get Judaized, when did you adopt, when did you adapt, when did you, it's anything but that you could actually be who you say you are. And so my point in this is to say that your whole approach is wrong.
Mm.
That you have to start with the original people being Black. Now, when I submitted this to them for publication, when I gave thought to it, I said, they're going to need to put this early on in the book. If they put me in the back of the book, I know that they just trying to, trying to fluff me off. But if they were being honest about it, they would have to put it near the front, and they did that. So I'm appreciative to them for that. It means a lot. But I don't hold back. I don't change my messages for white audiences.
Right.
Truth is truth.
That's it. That's it.
If they're going to receive it or reject it, that ain't my problem.
That's your own thing.
But it is my problem if I don't bring the truth. The watchman has to bring the warning. Whether the people hear it or not, that ain't the watchman's problem. Once the watchman does what he's supposed to do, his hands are clean. So I'll double check and make sure that you have this.
Yes.
And also,
yes.
There's a piece I wrote for Haaretz newspaper here way back in 2011 that's called The Dangers of Eurocentrism.
The dangers of Eurocentrism.
Eurocentrism, I think he said.
Yeah.
Oh, centrism. Okay.
I get it. I sent it to you.
Centrism. You can put my name in and it'll come up.
Okay.
And what this was that this is 2012. And what I did was I had to challenge the Israeli Minister of Interior here, who had made the statement that, quote, this country belongs to us, to the white man. And so I wrote a reply to him that, hey, we see you, we hear you, stop lying.
Right.
But
all
yeah,
right.
there's lots.
All right, my last question. Were you there when Whitney Houston and them came over to get baptized?
My wife and I were the primary hosts for them.
Yes. Oh, wow. Wonderful.
Yeah. Did she accept it that we Israelites?
Whitney was on a steep learning curve. Mm-hmm. Whitney came as a troubled sister, daughter. That's how we treated her. Mm-hmm. We didn't treat her as celebrity. Right, she was our sister who was wounded. We know what the industry does to our people. Mm-hmm. And so we treated her and Bobby's sister, who was terminally ill at the time. The whole family came. Mm-hmm. See, it was Whitney's brother and sister-in-law who were already inside the community. They didn't live here, but they were inside. They had embraced the teachers. And so daughter Neat was like her manager. So we met them at the Million Family March in DC, the Million Family March. And so she came up and we rented a bus. We traveled the country. They came here, stayed in our guest house. Mm-hmm. We kept the paparazzi at bay. We didn't have press conferences and all that. And they followed us all over the place. And so, give you an idea, we went down to the River Jordan. and Whitney comes out of the dressing room on her cell phone. And the paparazzi, not understanding what was happening, they start talking about how it don't mean nothing. Why is she on her phone? She was talking to her mother. She was talking to Sissy Houston, who was a gospel singer.
Right.
Whitney grew up in the church singing about the River Jordan.
Right. I
So
lived around the corner
what that meant, what that meant for her was something that they couldn't understand. And so, long story short, Whitney was blown away by her experience. On Entertainment Tonight, and let me say this, she not only adopted Ben-Ami as her spiritual father and vice versa as his spiritual daughter, but she was on her way back here a couple of weeks before she, I'll say it, was murdered. On Tonight, they interviewed her goddaughter, and Whitney had told her goddaughter the night before that I'm taking you back to that land and where you can get in that healing water. She said, I'm gonna take you with me. We had done a version of the old spiritual, the old civil rights spiritual. We had taken We Shall Overcome, and we had recorded it, but we changed the tense. We changed it to We Have Overcome. And Whitney was going to do the lead track.
Wow.
We had reserved the lead for her. So we went on and did the song after she passed away with our own singers, but she was going to have the lead on that. Now, I'm absolutely sure that that world would not want to have someone of the caliber of a Whitney Houston who could turn her life around and then be such a figure in our community like a Muhammad Ali was for the Nation of Islam.
Right, right.
The powers that be said, no, we can't let this happen. That's me talking, but I know, and it's on Entertainment Tonight that she says, I'm coming up, you and I'm going to bring you, talking about her goddaughter, to that land. So, yeah.
Wow.
Did she understand? Did she understand all of it in totality? No, none of we're all learning. We're all continually learning. But she was definitely on the path.
Yeah, she knew the truth.
Yeah.
All praises. All right, y'all. So definitely. Anybody else got anything before we close out?
No, I just want to say thank you, Brother Saw, and please don't forget to send. I'll get with Barrett Walk, and I'm trying to keep in touch with you, and also the guy that you say is up here in DC. Right. So
I'll get that to you. I'm gonna pass it on to Brother Barak.
Appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, Brother Saw is on WhatsApp. As well, if y'all ever want to reach out to him, he is on WhatsApp. I had to download the app to get it. But definitely, we are so thankful, my brother, for you to come and share a lot of historical information. And also, we thank the Most High for keeping y'all safe, and we're going to continue and to have y'all in our prayers and protect y'all. And definitely, it's just been amazing, that a lot of stuff that you had spoke about, my brother Yashia has been teaching about how the ancient Palestinians look. So it's just validation on confirmation on a lot of our historical information, and we're hoping and praying that we can get this stuff out to a lot of our family members that's Christian and Muslims and everything else, because the awakening is here. We just have to continue to study instead of just sitting around just listening to what somebody got to say, and start reading and researching on our own. All right, so definitely, my brother.
Appreciate that. Let me just say this.
Uh-huh.
We're not trying to convert or convince anybody of anything, but like you said, the information that we have in our presence here and the presence of others in this land that have always been here, that look like us, you know, that are in the corners, you know, in the different villages all throughout this land, they are the confirmation of the information that we're coming into contact with. So it, you know, the Most High made this happen, made this possible. So I'm glad to be a part of that. I'm glad to make the connections with you and the family there. And you know, I can come back again at another time. I can have another brother or sister.
What I was going to say is, just next year we do want you to come back, because we want to plan a trip when this is over with the war. So we want to talk about that and talk about how we're going to, you know, come as a community and come visit, and you guys do the tours like you normally do. Yeah. So we definitely want to discuss that. So maybe sometime after January, definitely before Passover, we can schedule something and have you come on and bring on whoever can help us out with the hotels and things of that nature.
Sounds like a winner.
All right.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother.
Thank you so much. And y'all definitely have a blessed day, and thank you all for coming.